Hello, I'm Reverend Karen Davis of First Christian Church. I'm going to give you a spoiler alert before I talk about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. In that movie, they are searching for the Holy Grail. It seems that as folks look at a display of various chalices, that the decision is before them which one would be the one that Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah, would use. Well, it seems that as people look at those from the world standards, thinking that Jesus is the Messiah, Jesus is the Christ, so it must be one of the more beautiful chalices, the one embellished with gold and jewels. Well, choosing by the world standards does not end well. But as Indiana Jones looks at the various chalices, he sees one that is a bit rudimentary, that is carved out of wood, and he thinks, that simple, basic chalice made by the hands of a carpenter, that perhaps is the correct one. And he chooses wisely, using the wisdom of God rather than that of the world. As we reflect this week on 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 18 through 25, Paul is talking about the contrast between the wisdom of God and the wisdom of the world. That what the world values differs from that of what God values. And as you look at the life of an individual, you can find out what they value, not by what they say always, but more importantly, by what they do. How they spend their time, how they spend their resources, speaks volumes of what they value. It tells you about the wisdom by which they live their lives. In 2004, in the show, The Antique Roadshow, a painting by a woman affectionately known as Grandma Moses was taken there to be valued by the experts by a man whose mother had 6 or 7 of Grandma Moses's paintings. Grandma Moses didn't start painting till later in her life, and at first she thought her paintings weren't worth much, so she sold them for merely $10. This man said that that's what his mother had paid, that she'd been a friend of Grandma Moses and bought several of her paintings. That painting that had sold for $10 was valued at $60,000. That in the eyes of one person, what may seem like something that's not worth much, in the eyes of another is quite valuable. We are reminded as the people of God to judge those things around us through the eyes of God, to look with God's wisdom, that rather than being told by the world to be powerful and mighty, we are to be humble, that we are to be kind rather than intolerant. We are to choose those things that God would have us do, not to measure our success always by numbers, but perhaps by relationships. That we are to look at that which God has called us to do as we take up our cross and follow in the footsteps of Christ, one who oftentimes was found in the company of those that the world had devalued, that he, as a follower of God, found great value in. We are to do likewise, to continue to see those that God has called us to serve and to put our time and energy and effort in doing God's work. To take up the wisdom of God as we continue to serve God each and every day. So I invite you this week to reflect on God's wisdom, to reflect on God's values, to ask yourself, Where do I put my time, effort, and energy? And am I placing it in that which God values or that which the world has told me to value? Go forth serving God and do so wisely. Go with God's blessings and God's peace.